Hello, my name is Sarah Call and I'm the Academic Success and Retention Specialist here at Upper Iowa University. Today's workshop topic is going to be stress management. So let's get started. Oh, So what is stress, right? We know the standard definition being pressure or tension exerted on a material object. We think like stress fracture. It's often used in terms of building things. But the definition of stress we are going to focus more so on is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. So when you think of the word stress, what comes to mind? Some common examples for those in college, right? The word college itself could be a good synonym for stress for some folks. You think of headaches, stress headaches. You think of mental health issues, right, being related to stress. You think of, oh, I'm stressed because of my math test, or I'm stressed because reasons X, Y, Z, right? Think of some of your own, what comes to mind when you think of the word stress. So some symptoms of stress, right? It has symptoms that could affect your body, your mood, or your behavior. Here on your body, we see the example of headaches, chest pains, sleeping problems. On your mood, it could look like anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, irritability, depression. Or on your behavior, so it could be overeating or undereating. It could be drug use, social withdrawal, maybe not engaging in exercise or just things you love in general. So some of those depression symptoms, right? So some stress is okay though. So we call this eustress. It's sort of the positive stress. So it can aid in productivity. It gives you motivation, could cause an extra burst of energy, right, to finish tasks. It's a normal part of life. It's the positive stress. It's the you're taking things seriously enough to be focused on them kind of stress. But then there's the other kind of stress, right, where it's a lot of stress and it causes what we call distress. So this stress is problematic when it interferes with your normal everyday activities. So you may start experiencing some of those symptoms we mentioned earlier. And this kind of stress, too much of it can prevent you from coping. So you might shut down and not be doing so hot. So some major sources of stress, and I'm sure there are more, but just some major ones, right? Conflict. So maybe you're having a roommate conflict, maybe you have a conflict with your parents, other family members, significant others. Hassles and frustrations, so those are usually minor, right? So maybe some guy cut you off in traffic, right? Or you didn't have enough quarters for the payphone, whatever. Illness, we saw a lot of stress related to that this past year and a half, haven't we? Finances, right? So if money's a little tight, that could be a stressor. Life changes, so maybe coming to college, that's a major life change. Death in the family, marriage, moving. There's a whole list of them, but major life changes typically. Job stress, so maybe you've been handed a promotion at work, maybe you have a big project, or maybe there's something less than happy or favorable going on in your workplace, and that's stressing you out. And lastly, cataclysmic events. So those are things like earthquakes, tsunamis. I'm thinking like a 9/11 sort of event outside of your control and catastrophic. So stress and you, just taking a couple minutes to reflect, what are your current stressors? What are those things? Maybe they're from that list we just talked about. Maybe they're other things. How do you cope with those stressors, right? Positive or negative, just taking a minute to go, okay, this is how I'm coping with these. And then what do you currently do to relax or de-stress? So how are you maybe in a more healthy way managing your stress? So stress management, right, is not stress elimination. You're always going to have life happens, things happen. You're never going to be stress free. So step one in stress management is identifying if you're experiencing unhealthy stress. So is it that use stress that we talked about earlier that is positive and it's motivational, or is it that stress that's really bogging you down? So then you'll want to seek out resources to aid in stress management. So maybe that's engaging in counseling, maybe that's doing some other things, which we'll talk about in a minute. And just remember, there is no magic stress cure. So you can't, pop a pill and be stress free, right? Because when you come to it's whatever's stressing you out is still probably going to be there. So some resources for stress management, right? Health and exercise. Even if you're not big into exercising, just a simple walk could do the trick. Having positive beliefs, and what I like to say, even just about positive thinking, is if you are a very, maybe not negative person, but lean more towards the cynical side of things, if you can't quite make the jump to positive thinking, at least go to neutral, and that will help a bit. So social skills, right? If you feel like maybe you don't have a good set of social skills in your toolbox, that may make you feel isolated and more stressed out. Having social supports is a good resource. So maybe you call up your best friend or family member, or if you have a church group or a theater group, whatever it is you engage in, social supports are usually good for managing stress. Material resources, right? I would not fail to mention that, hey, if you're stressed about money, going for a walk or taking a bath or whatever isn't going to fix that, right? We know that sometimes you need, your bills to get paid in order to feel less stressed, and that's understandable. Control, so feeling like you're in control of your situation or in control of whatever is going on, right? The more in control you feel, perhaps the less stressed you may be. Having a sense of humor is also good in any situation, especially stressful ones, because it helps you to look at the situation differently. If you can make light of something, there's a chance you're a little more hopeful about it. And also, I think humor is a good way of separating when you're in a situation that you can't control. If you can joke about it, you're in a little bit better position than just going, oh, it's out of my control. It's just completely, and then ruminating on that. And then lastly, relaxation. So whatever relaxation looks like for you, maybe it's a hot bubble bath, maybe it's a little bit of yoga, maybe it's just drinking a good cup of tea, maybe it's playing checkers, right? Some of those activities. So keeping in mind that in stress management, small changes matter. So maybe it's cleaning your space. I know for me personally, like I get stressed out when my house is not clean. But when my house is clean and I've like lit a candle, that's a good feeling right there. Maybe it's journaling, right? Expressing some of those thoughts or feelings. If you're an artsy type, maybe it's a sketchbook, right? Taking a walk. Again, it doesn't have to be intense exercise. Walking is just fine. Maybe it's listening to music, stretching. Maybe it's just laughing. Maybe you just take a night off, go get some ice cream with your friends, right? You probably feel better after that. So some short-term ways to cope with stress. You can relax using deep breathing. Take a break. Ask yourself, is this worth being upset over? Or my favorite strategy that I use frequently is if I find myself overthinking something, I'll ask myself, is there anything you can do about it right now? Typically the answer is no, because I'm usually about ready to go to bed when I start thinking like this. And then I just sleep fine because I'm like, okay, you're right. There's nothing I can do about this right now. And if there is something you can do about it, then go ahead and do it. So for me, sometimes if I get stressed out about, say, my house not being clean and I have 10 minutes, okay, then I'll sweep something or I'll wipe something down or whatever. And then lastly, just make a to-do list and prioritize. When you feel organized or you are organized, you'll feel a little bit less stressed about things. So some long-term ways to cope with stress. having a routine and avoiding procrastination. So that goes a little bit with that organization we talked about on the last slide. Exercising regularly, eat well-balanced meals and avoid caffeine. If you are a person who is prone to stress or even anxiety, caffeine may not be helping you. So not saying avoid it completely, but maybe limit your caffeine intake a bit. Try to get 7 hours of sleep each night. I know when I presented this workshop yesterday, quite a few people laughed at that because there's this notion that, oh, you're in college, that means you don't sleep. If you plan accordingly and you take care of the things you need to do during, other times, you may not always hit 7 hours, but you can usually get a couple more than, say, 3. Practice relaxation techniques, so make those part of your routine. Talking to someone about your stress, so maybe you do engage in counseling. I'd like to add that we do have free counseling resources here. If you'd like the link to that, I can get it to you or ask literally anybody at Upper Iowa University. This even is available to center and online students via Zoom. So I'd say if counseling is something you're looking into, go ahead and do it. And then lastly, having hobbies and leisure activities. So give yourself something to do that isn't related to school and work or even your sport, right? Give yourself a hobby that maybe you're productive with. Maybe it's making things, maybe it's going fishing, maybe it's something you enjoy that isn't related to your work or your schoolwork. So next is progressive muscle relaxation. So basically what you're going to do for that is you're going to breathe deeply and be mindful and relax, right? Take however long you need. And then what you'll do is you'll kind of take each muscle group and tense it and hold. And then maybe after you count to 5 or 10 or whatever you're comfortable with, you release. So make a fist, clench it, clench it, clench it, and then release. And then do that with other muscle groups in your body. And you'll kind of notice, you'll learn to recognize what tension feels like in your body. So I know a lot of people will clench their jaws and not realize it, or they'll have their shoulders up and not realize it. And so just learning to recognize that and how to deal with it. And then obviously, if tensing something hurts, right? So you broke your leg or whatever, you can't tense your leg, that's okay. Just skip that. So just a couple of reflection questions. What are some short-term ways I can manage my stress during finals or other stressful times this semester? And then lastly, what are long-term ways I can manage stress during the remainder of the academic year?